This past Sunday, we celebrated the first week of Advent by lighting the prophet's candle, which represents hope. Over 700 years before Christ walked the earth, the prophet Isaiah prophesied that the Assyrian Empire would invade the nation of Israel and carry them into captivity. So with such dark and gloomy days ahead, where would the people of Israel find hope? Well, they would look to places that you wouldn't really expect, and places that would offer no help. For instance, first they turned to spiritists and mediums. The prophet said in verse 19 of chapter 8, "When men tell you to consult mediums and spiritists who whisper and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God? Why consult the dead on behalf of the living?" They would also turn to their own strength. They said that when the walls fall, we'll rebuild. When the cedars fall, we'll replace them. Looking to their own power and their own devices through their pride and arrogance, thinking that they could solve the issue. And one place that they did not look was to God. As a matter of fact, they were angry with God, even though the reason this calamity was going to befall them was because they had turned their back on God and become disobedient. And so in verse 21 of chapter 8, the prophet says, "Distressed and hungry, they will roam through the land. When they are famished, they will become enraged, and looking upward will curse their king and their God." So since it was due to their own sin, they really had no reason to be angry with God. But there's sometimes, though, for some of us who are Christians, who have a personal relationship with Christ, we fall into difficulties and tragedies due to no fault of our own, not because we've done anything wrong. And so it's at those times that we particularly struggle with feelings of anger toward God, or questions of why and doubt, because we've been living a life for the Lord in a relationship with Him, living as best that we can, and yet still tragedies come into our lives. And so we tend to, in our humanness, question why, and sometimes even get upset with God. And so what do you do in those times? How do you break free of that anger and that doubt that tends to literally overcome you? Well, Stormy O'Mardian had some good advice for us, and here's a couple of things that she said. She said that if you've been mad at God, say so. Be willing to admit it to God. God, I've been mad at you ever since my brother was killed in that accident. God, I've been mad at you since my baby died. God, I've been mad at you ever since I didn't get that job I prayed for. And she says, be honest. You won't crush God's ego. Release the hurt and let yourself cry. Tears are freeing and healing. Pray a prayer of release and say something like this: Lord, I confess my hurt and my anger and my hardness of heart toward you. I no longer hold that offense against you. Take away my misconceptions about you and help me to know you better. So if you're struggling with that type of anger or hopelessness or doubt because of a tragedy in your life, just be willing to confess it to God. Tell Him how you really feel, and then make the choice to let it go and to do something that's very important. Start trusting God. And realize that we don't always understand fully why things are happening, but we can still trust God and know that that He will be with us. And so our next step then, during times of difficulty, whether we brought them upon ourselves or whether we're innocent in the situation, is to start trusting God. And for Israel, even though they brought their calamity upon themselves, God did not abandon them. He still offered them words of encouragement. And we find those in a wonderful Christmas passage that so many of us know. And it's Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. And the prophet said this, and this is where Israel would find their hope. This is where we will find our hope, that hurt and tragedy and pain will not always rule the day, but we find our hope and our help in the message of Christmas. And so listen to what the prophet said. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. With Jesus, there is hope. With Jesus, there is peace in the midst of your hurt, now and forever. Well, I hope the message of Christmas gives you some hope and comfort during these dark days. And as you turn to God through Jesus Christ, you will find that peace that you need. We discussed so many other things and had such a good discussion at New Day Fellowship. We hope that you will join us in person Sundays at 10:30. 115 North Fayette Street at Branch Creek Place. We are temporarily renting what some people know as the Senior Center there on Fayette Street, and we would love for you to join us. We have a free breakfast. We have a great Bible discussion, a great worship time, and we just encourage and love on one another. So we hope you'll join us. We'll see you this coming Sunday.